Guys, and welcome to the weekly session. This is week 3. Today we're going to be looking at an out of possession topic. The last 2 weeks, of course, we've looked at in possession, and we're looking at intercepting passes with the under 9s. So the session was ran with 12 players. I had access to half of a 7v7 pitch. There was balls, there was cones, there was bibs, and also in my environment, I have access to a variety of different size goals. If you don't have them, cones for goals, jumpers for goalposts, anything you can use to mirror a goal is perfectly acceptable also. So the objectives of the session were for players to understand when to mark an opponent, for players to understand when to intercept a pass, and how to position themselves correctly so they can either mark someone, they can intercept the ball, they can cover passing lanes as well. As an added caveat to this, one of the things I've asked my under 9s to do this season is to come up with some team values. 3 words that they chosen from a list of about 20 that are really going to incorporate every practice and every game and how they perform as a team going forward. For players aged 8 and 9, I worded this as what makes a great team, and they chose the 3 things that they thought would make a great team. The 3 values that they chose were to be kind, be courageous, and be collaborative. And as you can see from the objectives of the screen, I've tried to link each objective to one of the values that they see as important. Part of the reason for this is so that there's an association with each objective that we're looking for. So it's okay, well, I'm doing this to be courageous, and that's what we think makes a great team. I'm doing this to be collaborative, and that's what we think makes a great team. But also it means that I can just shout out certain buzzwords. Remember, be kind to yourself, be courageous in that situation. Can we be collaborative in this situation, that they're able to understand immediately without me having to go into a load of coaching jargon, which a lot of coaches, myself included, can have a tendency to do from time to time. As with the previous 2 weeks, the arrival activity was a 3 versus 3. This was just a regular game. I gave players a little bit of flexibility on rules. They could have no goalkeeper, they could have a set goalkeeper, they could have a rush goalkeeper. But as I said last week, it's really just an opportunity for me to see where the players are, see what they've learned from the previous week, as well as give them a little bit of time to be social with each other, having just had a long day at school, followed up immediately with an after-school club. After the 3v3s, I moved on to a handball game, monkey in the middle as the kids like to call it, piggy in the middle as it might be known in other countries. With 12 players, it was a 9 versus 3. So I split the teams into groups of 3. They each spent 45 seconds to a minute in the middle. And the challenge was, how many passes could they intercept? I gave them 2 opportunities to be in the middle. The first time to set an initial score, then we were able to speak about things. And then the second time, they would try and beat their previous score. After each group of 3 had a go defending, I brought them in and I asked them questions such as, where can you position yourself in order to be able to intercept a pass best? Is it best to go chasing the ball, or should you go and mark someone? Can you just mark one person, or do you have to protect an area? Trying to get the answers out of them rather than me force feeding the information. They're still at an age where they're learning. They're going to remember things some weeks, they're going to forget things the other weeks. But if I can hopefully encourage them to give me the answers and then provide feedback on top of what they're saying, the studies and the data and everything else about how people learn show that they're going to be more likely to remember the things that you've discussed. One of the best things about doing this practice to begin with is that there was a lot of laughter and there was a lot of smiles. The kids really enjoyed throwing the ball and keeping it away from people who was chasing it. Now, of course, this isn't the main outcome of the session. The outcome is something football specific, but in terms of building a team bond, in terms of making sure the players are receptive to the future, the rest of the session going forward, starting off with something that makes them laugh, makes them smile, it's going to put them in a good mood, it's going to make them more prepared to listen to you, and it's ultimately going to get more energy out of them for the rest of the session. So for the second practice, I broke them into groups of 6. 2 players were defending, 2 players were starting as, say, defenders, trying to build the ball out and play into the strikers, and then there was 2 players as the strikers as well. The defenders would start in a zone that was theirs in the middle of the pitch. As soon as the first pass was made, one of those players could go and put pressure on the ball, and it was up to their partner to slide and screen and try and intercept any passes that were played forward. If the attacking group of 4 were able to successfully play the ball across to the strikers, then the strikers could score and the defenders would have to recover to try and stop them. If the defenders, of course, could intercept the pass, then it was up for them to go and attack the other goal. I gave the players a little bit of freedom in terms of how they did the rotations. They could switch every time, they could switch every 2, 3, 4, 5 goes, whatever they felt comfortable with that was going to help their learning. This then of course allowed me the opportunity to observe, see how they were managing themselves. After all, leadership, teamwork, communication, all these things are taking part while they're trying to figure this out. Additionally, it allows me to just focus on the coaching points, the things that they're doing well, and the mistakes that are happening on a regular basis that I can maybe step in. Additionally, by having two groups working at the same time, it means I can keep the ball rolling time high. While I'm speaking to one group, the other group are playing. In terms of a progression to the session, I allowed the defenders to choose what they was going to do. So when the first pass happened, one of them was allowed to go and press, and the other one had a choice. They could either stay in that middle zone and try and cut out the passes, or they could drop back to mark, to try and cover the other two strikers and intercept the pass from a deeper position, or slow them down should the ball get through. Obviously, this is a little bit of risk versus reward. Do you want to open those spaces, or do you want the defenders to stay closer together? Of course, if you push higher, then there's the risk that that pass goes behind you, especially at under 9 where there's no offside and they're playing 7v7. So that decision making was good, and it allowed me to see how they approached that rule, what they thought was the best decision, whether it was to slide and screen or whether it was to drop back and try and protect the goal. The final part of the practice was a 4 versus 4 game +2. This time the jokers were placed next to the goal, as we've been focusing on screening those passes going straight forward in behind the opponents. I felt this was a really good way to try and get the players thinking about how they can block those passes and then also be in a position to intercept them should they go that way. Additionally, one of the things I've noticed is when a pass is played, the players' eyes tend to follow the ball. So this was a really good opportunity for me to talk about, if that ball does go behind you, can you then think about protecting the middle space first and following the player who makes the run? Additionally, with the game, I made sure that I kept score. It was written down on the whiteboard. If somebody scored, they run over, they make a tally mark to show that they've scored. And the reason for this is to try and encourage that competitive element, but also that ability for players to control their emotions or recognise stages in the game when they need to try and turn it up because they're behind, or when they need to slow it down because they're winning and they're in no rush. Again, this is not something I'm forcing, it's more so that I'm encouraging it. We're not spending time talking about it, but I'm hoping that the rules and the conditions will encourage the players to go through these psychological moments in the game and start recognising these moments in the game, so when they get older we can talk about them and they've got a reference point for their views on particular situations in games, whether they're in front or whether they're behind. Final thing in this session, obviously working with under 9s, one of the things is just because we understand coaching jargon, it doesn't mean that they did. So I introduced 3 key words to this session. The first one was goal side. Do they know what goal side means? It's a common phrase used by coaches. I hear coaches shout it all the time, but players are not always sure what you mean by it. Even with the players I work with, I explain what goal side is. It's standing closer to the goal than your opponent. I might still shout goal side. They'll recognise it and then they'll stand the opposite side. So that was something that I wanted to be able to explain to them, so that when I say goal side, they know what I'm talking about. Additionally, ball side was another one. If you're standing ball side, it's a bit easier to intercept the ball and you've got a little bit less risk of the opposition being able to get through into the middle of the goal. The final one was intercepting, and while we obviously know what it means in terms of footballing terms, and of course the session topic is intercepting passes, when I asked the players at the start, there was a little bit of confusion. This is probably more so relevant for my current situation, as I work with kids from a number of different nationalities for who English is not the first language for the majority of them. However, I would say for most 8 and 9-year-olds, you will see coaches use certain terms that they think as common knowledge, but of course 8 and 9-year-olds are still learning the game, they're still learning what certain words mean. So if you do have the chance to come up with a list of key terms for this session, you might use goal side, you might use ball side, you might want to use something else, then make sure you explain to the kids what they mean and try and get them to repeat the answers later on during the session to reinforce the learning. If you've enjoyed this session, please make sure you give us a follow to be notified for when week 4 comes up. And if you like the video, make sure you give us a thumbs up below.